All right. Are you ready for the third topic, David?
All right.
Okay. So the third topic is one that is globally deeply embarrassing. And that is that the United States actually vetoed a UNSC ceasefire in Gaza. And the US and Britain were the only two out of everybody. Britain abstained, and then the United States vetoed it without any real reason to do so. And globally, it was very, very embarrassing. And the rest of the world is pretty upset about it. So, would you like to hear some of the responses? So, the United States, the deputy U.S. ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood,
Mr. Wood.
yes, it's oh god, okay, told the council that the draft resolution was rushed. It was rushed and it was imbalanced and it was divorced from reality that would not move the needle forward on the ground in any concrete way, which that is so vague. That is so vague as to what that means. And he said, we do not support this resolution's call for an unsustainable ceasefire that will only plant seeds for the next war. That is so vague. That is not saying anything that helps in any real way. It to me, these words feel like the right words to say in his opinion, but that don't actually mean anything. And only plant the seeds for the next war. I bet the people who are in conflict right now would sure like this one to end first, and then take some diplomatic solutions to really figure out how to solve this problem so that neither side is suffering anymore. What on earth? What is a real viable reason to continue this? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
Well, and I'm interested, what in your guys' opinion, what is the actual reason that the United States vetoed this ceasefire against all of the other countries? And even when it came to the UK, they even had a much, because they abstained. So they had a much.
But abstaining doesn't mean a thing.
No, it doesn't.
Abstaining was a subtle way of following the orders of the master.
But I do think it's interesting that they didn't veto also.
They won't veto it because it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it doesn't make sense for the veto itself.
Yeah. We'll say more about that.
Meaning all you need for veto is one member.
Yeah.
That's it. The resolution is, so why have two? It just doesn't make sense.
And
what it makes sense is the idea is that they are following the masters, except in a different setting.
Yeah.
Rather than declaring the veto, they're gonna go just with abstain. Yeah. This way, they'll say, "Hey, we're gonna present to the rest of the world that we are not." When in reality, we all know UK is gone. UK is useless. UK is useless. As a matter of fact, at the time of this conversation here, guys, the UK decided to send its recon planes over Gaza. So they are conducting recon missions in Gaza. So that begs the question, why the heck is UK doing in Gaza airspace? That shows you right there.
Yeah, what on earth are they doing?
You claim about the international law, but where is the international law? Where is the sovereignty of airspace of a nation? It's all hypes, no more, no less. This veto is much bigger problem than the US ever anticipated. But here is the reality of it, the way I see it. This veto, beside the issue of Israel, there is another issue. Do you know what it is? Can you guess?
What is it?
Try, guess.
I don't know.
I put you on the spot.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah. It has to do with payback against Russia when he vetoed in Syria. Because in Syria, it was the US that's calling for the international military presence, international force. Russia vetoed it. So to me, that's a payback. And this is why it begs the question, is it time for this UN Security Council to cease to exist to begin with? It's no different than NATO.
For what point?
Because here is the reality of it.
Yeah.
It is much needed. A new world order is much needed today than at any time before.
Yeah.
Including the changes to the UN. First of all, you have to move the UN out of New York. You move it to a neutral country. And second, even the UN itself, I've always believed UN, United Nations, is toothless. They can't do anything. So either dissolve it, let countries do whatever they want to do, their own countries, they decide. Or you're going to have to reform that. The 5 permanent, it shouldn't be 5 permanent. Even Russia itself, believe it or not, they were calling for changes to the UN Security Council. Even Russia itself.
Yeah.
It's because this idea of the 5 permanent, well, what does it mean? 5 permanent means what? What about the other countries? What about do it on a rotational basis?
Yeah.
You put members, like there are 15 members in the UN Security Council.
Yeah.
Just for you guys to know. But the 5 permanents are the one that hold power.
Right.
That's why it only takes 1 to veto. It's over.
Well, and that seems very strange that it only takes 1 to veto.
That's
voting doesn't work that way, right?
Not in the UN Security Council. That's how it works.
But that's what I'm saying.
I see what you mean.
Is that doesn't make sense.
That's how it works. It becomes the calculations of, if you have to go back to, for example, in the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, mainly 80s, towards after the Soviet war in Afghanistan and so forth, and you start to, from that point forward, if I recall, my memory serves me well, from that point forward, because I've been watching the decisions of the UN Security Council. It was part of my academic background. I had to keep up with that. It was always became clear to me that it was just about the calculations. And if I voted today, I'll let you have it, but next time is going to be mine.
Yeah.
Because it will be an issue. Not all of them is going to agree with. And this is why I am leaning towards saying this vote wasn't about just Israel. It was about payback for Russia winning in Syria, because Bashar al-Assad in Syria still in power.
Yeah.
We said we're going to remove him, still in power. So, and because of what? Because of Russia. And Russia also didn't allow foreign military in Syria, because it will turn that country, like what happened in Lebanon back in the 80s. When you had the international force, most of them, even in Afghanistan, you have them under the ISF, International Security Force, or they call them in Beirut, in Lebanon, back then, they used to call them the blue helmets.
Yeah.
Because the UN
has
the blue helmets. But here is one thing that a lot of people do not know. Did you know that anytime the blue helmets are deployed, the US will not fall under the order of the commander of the unit?
That's interesting.
We will never fall under the orders.
Keeping the power.
Exactly. This is why you think about NATO. Who's the commander? The military commander of NATO is always a 4-star general from the US.
Well, the US Europe primarily funds it also. So there's a lot of money going in there.
That is true. So, but the thing now, the big picture to all this now is really how this vote, as I said, put the last nail in the coffin for US credibility. And it also highlighted how fragmented and fractured American foreign policy is. Biden and his team, or his government, or his cabinet, whatever term you want to use, are clueless, are useless, and be just reacting to events. That anytime you do that in foreign affairs, when you do that, that means you don't have a strategy in place. And this, to me personally, because now the world sees the what do we call the veil has been
lifted. Yeah.
That's it. Because credibility, there are those who say, why are you criticizing America for? No. This is about what's right and what's wrong. It's not about criticizing or not criticizing. That's usually always a weak argument. It's what's right and what's wrong. We know that was wrong to veto something like this against ceasefire. Simple as that. Has nothing to do with Israel. Has nothing to do. I have nothing against Israel or whomever for that matter. But when it comes down to doing the right thing, you can be cherry picking. Well, I'll do right today, but not tomorrow. That doesn't work that way.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. And this decision, I mean, I know what's her name. the U.S. ambassador Green, her name is Green, the ambassador, and Wood, the deputy ambassador, the vote. It's not them, by the way, guys. They've been following orders. It's Biden.
Yeah.
Straightforward. That's why I kind of I'll say it. Shame on you, Biden, for doing that, because it's not right.
The Biden's administration.
Yeah, the whole thing. Biden doesn't know, even poor guy. But that's where the idea is now. It highlights really that we're so fragmented. We're so fragmented, politically speaking. And when it comes down to the international stage, this casts more doubt about Americans' credibility. We got none left.
Well, you know what? And talking about, because people do say that sometimes. People say, well, you know, you're criticizing America, whatever. It's not about that. This looks very bad on the global stage. This looks terrible.
The only country. Okay. Before the vote on the UN resolution, I think 124, if I'm not mistaken, or 1204, I forgot the number.
Yeah.
The entire world, the US was the first to ban it. 144 countries voted for.
Yeah.
14 countries voted against, starting with the US.
Yeah.
But 40 countries abstained from that. Beside countries are free to do whatever they want. Right. But again, this is about right and wrong. You know, I'll say for example, the British that have been arguing for this. Well, how about allowing Israel to have a place in the UK? How do the British feel about that?
It's interesting. You know what I mean?
Also, same for us. Absolutely. How about having Israel right here in the US?
Right.
Establish their country right here.
Right.
How do you think Americans will feel?
Well, the Brits sort of, in a sense, caused this problem.
One created the problem with the partisan back then. So.
Which has not really been addressed very much, in case anyone was wondering. But I think you're absolutely right. In this circumstance, it's really about what is right, what is the right thing.
It's straightforward.
And you know, the argument about Israel defending itself, of course it has the right to defend itself. Of course it does. But globally, you're looking at all, more or less, unless it is directly influenced by the United States, the rest of the world is saying, guys, this is very unbalanced. And the death toll keeps rising. And we don't fully understand why you're against a ceasefire. I have not heard anything out of the US that makes any real sense to me as to what the real argument with the ceasefire actually is.
Do you want the answer?
Yeah.
It's because Congress is owned by the Jewish lobby.
Yes.
The lobbyists in Israel. That's why in US decisions, you know, even the president himself, president is useless.
Yeah.
American president is useless because the decisions are made within the hand of a few that controls the process. I'm part of it. I mean, heck, you have now, what's his name? Steven Spielberg, coming up with a movie about how Hamas is the one that is causing all this. I mean, come on, man. But if you understand the relationship between Steven Spielberg and the CIA, it will make more sense to you why that is. So it just shows you right there that for Washington, it's the elites that controls that process. And this is why they're saying no to the ceasefire. So what the president ended up doing? I was interviewed a few days before the vote. I was interviewed on Wednesday. Tuesday and Wednesday with Misfit. Misfit is in Washington, D.C. And they asked me that question. And I said, I don't see the U.S. supporting that. They're going to veto it. Biden's going to be taking a major strategic calculations regarding the upcoming elections. But for this, he's going to be pressured to go that route.
Well,
and that's what
I want to bring up one more thing in terms of the Ukraine situation, because, you know, I don't think that the United States expected it to end the way that it did. And that is a very clear sign to me that the power that the US once had is waning. And to be alone in the world in terms of these types of decisions, I think is exactly what you're talking about, David. It's fragmented foreign policy and it's bad foreign policy. What is what?
Well, you can actually, you don't have to say it about Ukraine. You can say it
Yeah.
about Israel itself.
Okay.
It's because they're two separate.
They're two separate things,
they-
but I wanted to point out the similarities in terms of conflicts are now not going in the direction that the
Yeah.
United States anticipated them
Yeah,
going
yeah,
in.
but there is a distinctions between the two because
Definitely.
the
I'm not saying
Ukraine
that.
has
Yeah.
different trajectory for it versus the Israel trajectory.
Sure.
So we can overlap the two because it'll create confusion for
Yeah,
that
guys,
one. So
I don't mean that.
I do challenge her.
Don't say it in the comments.
So no, we just
I understand.
that's the whole idea of the conversation. That's
Yeah.
because that's what our viewers expect from us.
Yeah.
Because it's just the idea. Mainly, your point will
Mhm.
be more applicable to Israel than it will be more into the Ukraine.
Yeah.
I understand the big picture of it.
Right.
It's just for this one because this one of a specific reason, and the reason being because you do not want peace in Middle East because peace does not bode well for Israel.
Right.
Israel strive when there's conflict
Yeah.
in Middle East. U.S. influence when there is conflict.
Right.
Now you don't have this anymore.
Right.
What's left? You got now an issue that have turned, and the Middle East has always been that way.
Yeah.
Anytime there is a conflict in the Middle East, it will draw the attention of the world.
Yeah.
Why? Because the Middle East is a center of gravity.
Yes.
For its economic resources, natural and so forth. And now you're looking at where things are headed, the changes, how now we're going to close 2023 and start 2024. Mm-hmm. And this is the indication, like the veto that the U.S. did, it's an indication for what lies ahead. What the U.S. doesn't think. Mm-hmm. It's not that they know. They know. It's not they don't think. They know. How the history books is going to now be talking about this dark era in American history.
Yeah.
Because it's a dark era.
It really is a dark era.
When we are closing our eyes on what's right, when we are contributing to war crimes, genocide, whatever term you want to use for that. Those are, you can't be cherry picking. This is what I'm saying. When it comes down to dealing with those issues, you state the fact as they are.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned, whether Israel defend itself, yes, it does have
absolutely,
like every other nation.
Like every other
but
nation.
When you step beyond the boundaries of self-defense, like what we are witnessing, what does bombing a hospital has to do with your self-defense?
Sure,
let's just face it.
Well, and there are reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like that
but also there are rules of engagements. You can't you can't do that.
Absolutely. And even if you're going to take that aside and you're just going to look at it from a foreign policy perspective, the fact that the United States is alienating itself to this extent is a bad deal.
Well, it's been going this way for at least for the last, to me, for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
We start to see the signs back then. It's going. I remember I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, and I was like, well, I see this is going to slow. What led you to think that way? I said, well, I'm seeing signs for where this is headed. So,
well, and you're right. It's one step at a time, right? It's not all at once.
That's how the demise of empires is.
Exactly.
It starts with one step at a time. And now we're seeing it onto the financial sector.
Absolutely.
It's coming, guys, on the financial sector. So make sure you educate yourself. You educate yourself about the financial aspects. We can stress this enough.
Absolutely.
So let me wrap this up, and we'll take a question or two. So just for you to understand, the vote, the veto one, that is.
Yeah.
And again, this is my opinion. Take it or leave it, whatever you want. So it's a nail in the coffin on American credibility, because this is it. Now, anytime America is going to say, well, we stand for human dignity. What dignity? When you turn that, we stand for democracy. What democracy? We stand for the rule of law. What rule of law? Because those now are gone, because we did it to ourselves. So it behooves us to not be talking about those anymore.
Well, and because you're right, it lost credibility.
No,
those things that it doesn't make any sense.
It's gone.
Do you want to take a question?
Yeah, I always like questions from our community. But this is why we wanted to have the membership. You guys, if you want to become a channel member supporter, just go ahead, sign up for that. And we will interact in the Q&A, because that will be just exclusive Q&A. All we do is answer your questions. That's all we're gonna do.
And I'm gonna promote our Rumble and our Locals.
Yes.
Rumble and Locals are and guys, if you have a question, please put the word question in front of it so I can see it easily. Our Rumble and Locals are places where we can speak more freely. And I don't know about you, but I really enjoy that. I really enjoyed being able to speak more freely.
Yeah.
All right.
It's even sad to say we speak freely in America. That's anyway.
I know. Okay, so from Fight Back, do you think total war is the goal in the Middle East?
No. Total war, because not everybody's going to be on board for that. Now, this would have been the case if the conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia persists, but it's no longer. So what will be the objective? So, and yes, you have now one card left for the US, and that card is Israel. But even for the US, it's going to come a point where it's going to say, we can't be doing this anymore. You're noticing now the European Union is pushing away from this support for Israel per se, because they saw what took place in Ukraine. So the short answer is no.
Okay, so one last question, and it's from David K. Mr. Walu and Elizabeth. Hi, David K. What do you think will happen in the upcoming Taiwanese elections? Will the U.S. respect the winner if it is not the DPP?
Yeah, well, that's why on the other channel I posted the picture of Jake Sullivan with both the foreign ministers, I believe, or the national security advisors. Don't quote me on this because I don't remember, of Korea and I'm sorry, of South Korea and Japan, and the term that. As a matter of fact, I do have it right here. Let me.
Oh, you have the picture?
No, I think
you
so.
might.
I think so. I usually keep those kind of stuff.
Yeah, the picture's staying
here. Because I share it with the community on the other channel, and and I wrote something about that one. So let me share it with you.
Cool.
Yeah, let me share it with you guys, and you'll see this one. Share screen. There we go. Post detail. Share.
There it is.
Right there. So, and what I wrote back then, I wrote the National Security Advisor said that the U.S. And its Asian allies, I call them puppets, will defend stability in the Taiwan Strait, which with the South China Sea is witnessing ongoing tensions that raises fears of a military conflict. So, and that's why I put that question. You all see what's coming, and no, we're gonna want to make sure to create tensions, because the fear of the outcome of the elections. Most Taiwanese, at least the people that I talk to, they're like, we are Chinese. You know, to those who make that argument, so
sure,
we are Chinese. Yes, you have the Hans and so, but they are Chinese. When you look at the ethnicity of, they're all Chinese. That becomes just that question of, you know, how much we want to foment those tensions. And mind you, and I will repeat it, that conflict, we're not gonna be part of it. We're gonna let South Korea, the Philippines, Japan, Australia be up front.
Well, like Ukraine.
Exactly. So no, if the elections comes out not in favor of what the US wants, the US will let it go, of course, but that does not mean we'll stop fomenting tensions. That will always be there. Mark my word on it, because that's where we see the next front.
Well, and my question to always ask is, what is the actual reason for the conflict? Right?
Yeah.
When we're looking at the situation in Taiwan, a lot of information has been brought to light about the microchip situation.
Yeah.
And that perhaps that's the real reason for that conflict.
Which is too late now.
Right. So whatever the conversation is about, you know, well, ethnic or what this belongs to what and this belongs to what, you guys ask yourself, what is the actual reason? Because it's not the reason. It's not to preserve democracy. You know what I'm saying? So figure out what the real reason is.
Those are hollow words. There's empty stuff,
always.
you know. But it's too late for the chip anyway, because China has developed one.
Right.
So the US realized the sanctions we embarked on backfired.
Sanctions have been backfiring.
It's the end.
Around
it's
the
a sign
world.
of the end.
It is.
That's usually what
it is. And I want to say one more thing about that, David. And that is, you know, if you guys follow Ray Dalio, who's a very, very interesting guy, and you know, some people agree with him, some people don't. But one of the things he highlights as the end of an empire is costly external wars, and that's exactly what we have right now. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that forward, that is part of the end of an empire cycle.
All right, guys. Well, we hope you find this very informative. And remember, please hit that like button and subscribe if you have not done so. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow on the Rumble.
Yep.
So remember to join us. As always, prepare yourself for changing world order. Till next time. Bye-bye.